pharmaceutical companies can charge more than 600 times what drug costs to make. You can save thousands of dollars if you try to find a solution in nature. In this video, you will learn why drugs are so expensive in the United States. You're going to discover the dirty tricks the industry uses to get rid of the competition, and how they use lobbying to control the market and get rid of alternative doctors. So let's begin. Every year, insane drug prices ruin millions of people's lives and put them into massive debt. Patients' out-of-pocket costs have risen to unsustainable levels. Cancer treatments can cost tens of thousands of dollars or even $120,000 per year. Many patients need to alter their spending habits to save money. They have to cut back on groceries or skip payments on rent and their mortgage to afford their medical bills. Pharmacologist Andrew Hill analyzed the drug prices in different parts of the world. He looked at the price of tyrosine kinase inhibitors. Hill used Indian government data to calculate the costs of pharmaceutical ingredients. He presented his findings at the European Cancer Congress in Vienna. In this table you can see the difference between drug prices. Hill found that Novartis' leukemia drug Livrake cost $159 to manufacture, but Americans paid $106,000 for the same drug. Roche's Tarceva for lung cancer cost $236 to make, but the US paid $79,000 for the same drug. And Novartis' Tykerb cost $4,000 to create, but Americans had to pay $74,000. There are several reasons why drugs are more expensive in the US. Drug companies claim drugs are costly because of higher research and development costs. But as you will see later, it isn't the reason why we have to pay so much for medications. Bringing a new drug to market takes a long time. Before you can create a new drug, you have to learn more about the disease you're going to cure. The National Institutes of Health supports most of the research in the United States. It is not drug companies as many people believe. Once the researchers understand the disease, they try to find a drug that can fix the issue. It is here that drug companies often get involved. The FDA regulates the clinical stage of drug development. Before trials begin, drug companies must file a new drug application with the FDA. They must prove to this agency that the drug is somewhat safe and effective. That proof often requires a series of clinical trials. If the tests are successful, the FDA approves it. Drug companies often obtain a patent on a new drug before clinical testing begins. Patents protect companies against the competition during the testing period. Clinical trials often take a few years. During that period, the drug manufacturer can't sell the drug. That means clinical testing eats into a drug's 20-year patent life. For that reason, drug companies are in a terrible rush to get the trials out of the way so they can start to market the pill. Pharmaceutical companies want us to believe that they spend a lot of money on research. But we don't know what activities they include under the heading R&D. Much of it can be marketing disguised as research. In 2002, 10 Fortune 500 US drug companies had combined worldwide sales of about $217 billion. They only spent 14% of that money on R&D and still had a profit margin of 17%. So the profits were a lot higher than R&D costs. These companies spent 41% of sales, about $65 billion on marketing and administration. So given these figures, it is tough to make a case that lower prices would reduce R&D spending. They could, for example, cut administrative or marketing costs instead. Or they could accept lower but still excellent profits. As long as profits are higher than R&D costs, they can't say that reduced prices would cripple their research. All big drug companies combine marketing and administration in their SEC reports. Administration costs include the rewards executives give to themselves. Top officers of major drug companies make a few millions to tens of millions of dollars in salaries. They also receive bonuses, stock options, and other compensations. Then there are general costs of running any big corporation such as accounting and more. Drug companies are not allowed to market drugs for off-label uses. That means that they can't make claims not approved by the FDA. Doctors, however, are not constrained by this law. They can't prescribe drugs for whatever reason they want. So if drug companies can convince doctors to prescribe drugs for off-label uses, sales go up. The problem is how to get around the law prohibiting marketing for those uses. That is where education comes in. Drug companies pretend they are informing doctors of other uses of their drug. They sponsor make-believe education and often use false research studies. In this way they can get around this law. So education is in fact marketing. Then there are legal costs which are enormous. Drug companies are in court all the time. They use it to extend marketing rights to their blockbuster drugs. This scheme more than pays for itself in the long run. It is one of the most productive things Big Pharma can do. Drug companies live off patents granted by the US Patent and Trademark Office. They also feed on exclusive marketing rights given by the FDA. Both things make it illegal for competitors to sell the same drug over a specified time. Therefore, extending these rights is a core strategy for Big Pharma. A patent can apply to one of 4 possible features of a drug: the drug substance itself, the method of use, the formulation, or the process of making it. Once a company loses exclusive rights to a drug, the FDA permits generic versions to come on the market. Generic drugs are copies of brand name drugs after their patents expired. They too need FDA approval, but the manufacturer only has to show that they are equal to the brand name drug they copied. Generic companies don't have to do clinical trials. Brand name companies have already done that. The first generic company on the market gets 6 months of exclusivity. Generic manufacturers therefore engage in something called shadow pricing. It means that they keep prices just beneath the brand name price. But when more generics enter the market, prices fall to as little as 20% of that of the brand name drug. This price drop means a loss of hundreds of millions of dollars a year for producers of blockbusters. Keeping generic drugs off the market is worth a lot of money. There are several ways drug companies can stop generic drugs. They can pay these companies to delay their drugs. Another tactic that Big Pharma uses to block them involves petitions to the FDA. They do this by pretending to raise safety concerns about a generic drug. By the time it takes to respond to this request, it delays the entry of the drug for about 13 months. Drug companies can also block a generic drug by not providing samples of the brand name drug. Thus, generic drug makers are unable to show the FDA that the pill is equal to the branded drug. Drug companies can also file for many patents spread over months or even years. They then can stop the competition by using a relevant patent or an FDA grant of exclusivity or both. Companies can also test every drug on children to get an extra 6 months of exclusivity. It doesn't matter whether children will use these drugs or not. Drug companies may also get patents on new uses of innovative drugs they created. Another name for it is me-too drugs. A me-too drug means a new drug application for a similar or identical brand drug. Drug companies often change some molecules in the old drug and then get a new patent. Take the case of Nexium. Nexium is a heartburn drug made by the British company AstraZeneca. The patent for their previous drug Prilosec was going to expire. At $6 billion in annual sales, Prilosec was once the top-selling drug in the world, so they had to find a replacement. The company got FDA approval for their new drug Nexium before the patent on Prilosec expired. AstraZeneca then launched a massive advertising campaign. They tried to persuade Prilosec users and doctors to switch to Nexium. Nexium became the most advertised drug in the United States. To help with the switch, AstraZeneca priced Nexium a bit below Prilosec. They also gave discounts to managed care plans and hospitals. Doctors also got free samples and patients could use coupons in newspapers. Overnight, Nexium replaced Prilosec. Soon the company dropped all references to the older drug in its advertisements. Lobbying is another strategy drug companies use to keep prices high. Pharmaceutical companies spend more money on lobbying than any other industry. They spent $4 billion on lobbying activities from 1998 through 2018. By doing so, they gained favorable treatments from legislators. One such victory was the Prescription Drug Improvement and Modernization Act of 2003. This act prevented Medicare from negotiating prices with drug companies. Medicare is a national social insurance program administered by the US government. It provides health insurance for Americans aged 65 and older, or younger people with some disabilities. The United States is the only developed nation that does not regulate drug prices. All other industrialized countries do. Public healthcare is the norm in many European countries. Their governments often determine what drugs they will cover and at what price. The methods vary in each nation. European countries sometimes refuse to cover medications they believe are too expensive. Any private insurers in those nations then follow their government's negotiated rate. As a result, medication can be half the price in Europe. Big Pharma contributes money to almost every political campaign. In 2018, it employed 1,407 lobbyists and 384 clients and spent $216 million. These lobbyists influenced politicians in Washington to promote drug companies. In 1987, Congress passed a law that made it harder to import medicine from other countries. Only the manufacturer could bring prescription drugs from another country. This law stopped people from obtaining cheaper drugs from Canada. In 1997, the industry made the Food and Drug Administration Modernization Act pass. This act required the agency to lower its standards for approving drugs. It made it possible for them to live on me too drugs. Congress also put the FDA on the pharmaceutical industry's payroll. In 1992, it enacted the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. Now, drug companies had to pay user fees to the FDA. That makes the FDA dependent on an industry it regulates. Since the bill passed, FDA employed thousands of people. It now accepts drugs faster than counterpart agencies in Europe and elsewhere. Although the FDA is quick to approve drugs, it is slow to take them off the market when they prove dangerous. Big Pharma supports a variety of front groups that masquerade as grassroots organizations. Drug companies started to hide behind them as more people questioned them. Another way Big Pharma can extend their monopoly is by eliminating alternative doctors. The FDA seldom punishes drug companies even if their drugs have awful side effects. Instead, they go after alternative medicines and supplements that are too successful. Laetrile or B17, for example, is illegal to sell in the United States. You can only sell solutions the FDA approves, but only pharmaceutical companies can afford these trials. Even if alternative doctors could pay for these tests, the FDA would reject them anyway. Big Pharma is not interested in natural remedies because you can't patent them. That is the reason they spread negative propaganda about natural remedies. Why would you buy useless drugs if you could use natural remedies at a fraction of the price? They want everyone to believe that their treatments are the only ones that work, so you can be their slave. The only reason they do this is to get rid of the competition and protect their monopoly. Drug companies are all about profit and not what's best for patients. They earn more money by treating cancer symptoms than curing it. If drug companies cure a patient, they lose a customer. They want to squeeze out every dollar from each patient. Whether the patient dies or not is irrelevant as long as they get paid well. Drugs will never cure cancer. A better way to deal with cancer is to change your bad habits. Our stress, unhealthy eating habits, and toxins make us more susceptible to cancer. If we want to cure cancer, we must find a solution from nature, not drugs. Drug companies live on our ignorance and fear. The only way they can't affect you is when you learn about the real causes of cancer. Once more people do that, we don't need to use their drugs anymore, and the industry will fail. Drug companies spend more money on marketing than on research and development. Big Pharma lives off patents granted by the US Patent and Trademark Office. They use 10 to 20 tactics to prolong the patents for their drugs. Pharmaceutical companies spend more money on lobbying than any other industry. Big Pharma is not interested in natural remedies because you can't patent them. You can save thousands of dollars if you try to find a solution in nature. If you enjoyed this video, then press the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video on social media with all your friends and families. Please visit our blog at cancerwisdom.net to learn non-toxic ways to treat cancer. You can also download more free documents from our free resource library and learn other ways to prevent cancer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.